All right, we be live. Hi everyone. I'm here with a very special guest, Dalia Ziada. Ziada, am I pronouncing your last name right?
Ziada.
Ziada. Ziada. Oh, Ziada. Does that mean Ziad means a lot in Persian? What does it mean
Exactly.
in
It's
Arabic?
very similar in Arabic. It means also an increase, an extra, a lot. Ziyada. Yeah, it's very similar.
Ziada.
Yeah.
Ziada. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so if I when I see the English, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but if I could see the Arabic, then I would know exactly how to pronounce it. So
Yes,
that's it.
I know. I
Yeah.
know.
Well, thank you for being here, guys. This is such a special honor that you're here. I also want to thank Dolly if she's here in the live. Oh yeah, she is in the live chat. She managed to arrange this, so I just want to thank her as well for making this happen. But I'm very excited, but many people might not know why I'm so excited. So Dalia, can you explain to people who you are, so people understand why I'm so excited to have this chance to be able to talk to you? So can you please let
Thank
people know
you.
more about you?
Thank you so much, Armin. I'm also excited to be with you. I mean, the effort you're doing to educate people about critical thinking and questioning everything is very, very important and very crucial. And I think this is something we've been missing in our region for so long. I mean, in our world, in our culture. So I'm happy to see this happening by someone like you.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, so let me start by saying a little bit about myself. My name is Dalia Ziada. I am an Egyptian writer and human rights activist and also Middle East peace activist. I've been working on Muslim Jewish dialogue and Arab Israeli dialogue for so long. And as you know, these are taboo topics in the Middle East, especially if a woman who identifies as a Muslim, as an Arab, do this, she's always seen as you know, as a traitor. But I found my way to deal with these issues over my career, over my life for years. And actually, things, I would say my work in this regard was somehow successful until October 7 happened. I mean, October 7 attacks on Israeli civilians last year. This is when I get my biggest fall, I would say. So what happened simply is that I like anyone with minimum conscientiousness, when I saw what Hamas terrorists did to Israeli civilians, I simply appeared on social media and I appeared on TV stations that asked me to comment on the war because of my work as a geopolitical analyst and also because I was leading a think tank in Cairo. So I appeared in the media and I said that Hamas is a terrorist organization and Israel has the right to defend itself. And if Arab countries are thinking straight, they will understand that Israel is fighting this war on behalf of all of us in the Middle East. And if they are thinking straight, they should be supporting Israel in this war, not siding with Hamas and Hezbollah and other terrorists. So imagine saying this to an Arab audience at this very sensitive time when they were actually celebrating the October 7 attack. I'm very ashamed to say that. They were celebrating the killing of the Jewish people, the raping of the women, and all these horrible
who,
things.
who who was celebrating? People, or the government is anti-Muslim Brotherhood, so anti-Hamas as well, right? So was it ordinary people who were celebrating this, or was it from the government who was
Yes,
celebrating?
it was the mainstream, just the general public. Once they knew the news, once they understood the news at the beginning was told us that it's only a clash between Hamas militants and Israeli soldiers. But as you know, social media, you cannot lie in the time of social media. So it didn't take long until the people realized that actually there was actual harm done to the Israeli civilians. So in my country, in my home country, Egypt, in other Arab countries, people went to the street and distributed sweet and things to celebrate. They were so happy. They saw this as a victory over Israel. And actually, what happened later on, although the regime itself is anti-Hamas, anti the Muslim Brotherhood, and all of this stuff, but they couldn't challenge the mainstream. They couldn't challenge the general public. And of course, because I mean, in Egypt, the government is a big failure when it comes to politics and economy, we have an economic crisis that we have not seen in our entire history right now. So keeping all this in mind, it was difficult for the regime to challenge the mainstream and double the outrage against the regime from just showing that they support Israel or they stand by or they condemn Hamas for what they did. So they had to go with the mainstream. And I think
Oh, we got
I'm
a
trying to
slight
figure out why they did what they
Sorry.
did to me.
You got disconnected for a few seconds. Can you just repeat the last part? Sorry.
So I said after the government had to go with the mainstream,
Right.
with what the mainstream want in order not to double the outrage coming from the street against the government. So I believe at that time they needed some kind of a scapegoat. This is my interpretation. I mean, so they looked at who is condemning Hamas, who is supporting Israel, so we can, somehow throw them to this general public to tear them apart and get busy with them and not busy with the government. I was one of only 3 people in the entire country, in the entire 110 million population, who dared to appear in media and condemn Hamas and say, and even the other 2 did not say we support Israel's right to defend itself. I was the only person who said I support Israel's right to defend itself. And of course, this stirred a horrible backlash against me. It started first by radical Islamists. First of, like the death threats coming, like messages and emails and social media insults and so. But I am used to that. I mean, I've been fighting against radical Islamists all my life, and this is their way to silence you. So I am used to that. So I expected, okay, it's just another wave of attacks. It will take 2 and 3 days and go. But it didn't. It didn't take only 2 or 3 days. Actually, it extended and it grew bigger very fast. Within only 1 day, radical Islamists started to say things like, her blood is sacred no more. Her blood should be shed because she's not a good Muslim. And a group of them, a Salafist group, and the Salafists, for the people who don't know, it's true they are not carrying weapons yet, but they are adopting the same mentality and the same mindset of the jihadists, like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and all these terrorist organizations. So a group of them who existed in my family neighborhood, exist in my family neighborhood, and they knew where I live. They went to my family house looking for me. They wanted to punish me for not being a good Muslim. But still, this is not the shocking part. The shocking part for me was when I contacted the security authorities in Egypt to ask for their protection. I told them, there are radical people who want to kill me. I need you to intervene, to help me. And the response I got from someone who's a senior officer, actually, he's someone very powerful. He can really protect me. He said, no, we are not going to protect you. And when I said, why this is the case, is it because I condemned Hamas? He said, no, it's because you said you support Israel. And he hung up the phone. And that was it. Terrible. And the next morning, of course, I was very terrified. At that night, I was in my apartment alone. I had to turn off all the lights so nobody knows that I'm in the apartment. It was very scary. I don't think I've ever felt scared in my life as much as this night was. The next morning, as soon as the sun came up, I got the news that there are 4 legal claims filed against me at the Attorney General's office, accusing me of things like, ranging from inciting war crimes, threatening Egypt's national security, up to the very funny accusation of spying for the Israeli Mossad. So
wow.
It's crazy. So I had to act very quickly. I contacted some friends in the US and other places worldwide, and they were so amazing, so amazing. They intervened immediately and got me out of the country in 3 hours. But the painful part, of course, is that I left with nothing. I left my whole life behind me. I left with only 2 suitcases and 1 backpack, and here I am. I mean, in the United States, and I think somehow I was sent here by God for some reason. I mean, I don't know. I maybe I'm trying to find the justification for why this happened to me. But actually, since I arrived here, I discovered that I did not leave the bad people behind. There are bad people here too. There are evil people here too. There are radicals here too in the West, in the United States. And since I arrived, I've been fighting against their narrative, and I've been trying my best to educate people about radical Islamism, about why they are a threat to everyone and why they should be defeated.
Okay, so just for people to understand everything you just said, I just want to highlight that basically, based on what you're saying, even though the Egyptian government is anti-Hamas, because the Egyptian government is against everything that is Muslim Brotherhood, and Hamas is part of Muslim Brotherhood, even though they're anti-Hamas, and even though the Egyptian government has a relationship with Israel, and they have a peace agreement with Israel, the anti-Israeli hate in Egypt is so much, and the support for Hamas was so much after October 7th in Egypt, that the government was too afraid not to give in to the crowd. So they want to appease them by going out, like they want to give in to the crowd by going out and hunting certain people that were supporting Israel or condemning Hamas. And you were one of the few people. However, do you think that most of the backlash against you, I suspect, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is not because you condemn Hamas, it's because you also supported Israel. Like if
Yes.
you had just said that Hamas did something wrong, but didn't also add to it that you support Israel, the backlash wouldn't be as severe as if. And why did you also, let me know if I'm correct, and also why did you have to add that? Like, why did you feel like you need to go beyond just condemning Hamas, but also show support for Israel? Can you explain that to us?
Sure, that's a great question. And I agree with you. I think what they saw as a crime, especially in the eyes of the Egyptian government, is that I said I support Israel. This is my crime in their eyes. And it's weird, as you said, I mean, Armin, like Egypt and Israel has a peace treaty that has been in place have a peace treaty. They signed the peace treaty in the 1979, more than 40 years ago. And this peace treaty has been in place for all this time, despite all the tensions, despite all the conflicts in the region. And in the past 10 years, we saw unprecedented economic and security cooperation between the two countries. Israel helped Egypt get rid of Hamas terrorists, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad terrorists in Sinai. The Israeli military helped Egypt in that. Egypt and Israel cooperated together in the Eastern Mediterranean on gas exploration and exportation to Europe. And it was a very successful business that really helped the Egyptian economy in a tremendous way. So keeping all this, and of course, above all, the Egyptian government, the current Egyptian leadership, the president of Egypt himself, President El-Sisi, has his own fight against the Muslim Brotherhood, against Hamas. So it did not make any sense to me. I thought when I was making this interview at that time, I thought I'm already speaking in line with what the Egyptian government believes. Because personally, I believe that Israel has always been a good neighbor and a good friend to Egypt. And if Egypt really, and actually, I don't know why the Egyptian government cannot see that our national security, our economy are so interdependent on on Israel's well-being in terms of security and economy. If the Israeli security is good, Egypt's security will be good. If the Israelis' economy is good, Egypt's economy will be good. Stability will serve everyone in the region, and Egypt particularly because it is the immediate neighbor of Israel. So keeping all this in mind, you would think that the Egyptian government will be on the side of Israel naturally. But unfortunately, this was not the case. And the reason for that is that hatred towards Israel is so embedded in the Egyptian society and the Egyptian culture, and even in the military ideology in Egypt, that all the peace treaties, all the good relationship between the two countries in the past few years was not able to remove, was not able to remove this hatred. Because, I mean, actually, even this cooperation, even this episode of great cooperation between Egypt and Israel recently, from the Egyptian perspective, it was seen as a pragmatic cooperation, a pragmatic step to cooperate with Israel, not really as genuine peace. Even the peace treaty signed more than 40 years ago is seen by the Egyptians, by the Egyptian government, I mean, as a strategic agreement, a security agreement that prevents us from fighting with each other, but not really as something that we can rely on to cooperate with each other. And this is the difference. For Israelis, I know very well it is different. Israelis are taking it so seriously and taking peace with Egypt so seriously. But unfortunately, this is not the case in Egypt.
So why do you have a different opinion than other people, many people in Egypt? And why are you so passionate about having a good relationship with Israel and supporting Israel? What made you, because this seems to be a major focus of your work. Can you explain why?
Actually, it has to do with something that happened about 20 years ago, or even more, when I was in my first year in university. You know, Armin, I grew up in a very conservative society where, you know, in our mosques, every Friday, there is a stable prayer to curse the Jewish people and to curse Israel. It's like that, and curse everyone who cooperates with them. So this is the prayer we hear in every Friday sermon. And not only that, in our media, all the time, in our TV shows, in our talk shows, in our political shows, they are cursing Israel day and night. In our schools, in my primary school, in the textbooks, they actually, there is a lesson in the textbook in primary school. I'm not sure if it is still the case until now, but at least in my time, and I was born, I mean, many years after the peace treaty was signed, and there was in my primary school textbooks a lesson about the Yom Kippur war with Israel. That, of course, is demonizing Israel in every way you can think of, I mean. And then after we take these lessons, they take us on the school bus, and they take us to a museum made specifically for the Yom Kippur War. And you spend the day in the museum, and actually all the day they are speaking to us about how bad is Israel. It killed our soldiers, it killed our people. So this is how they indoctrinate us, how we grow up thinking in such a very negative way about Israel. So it was natural for me in my first year in university to join the protests that were happening at that time, because it was around the time of the second Intifada. I'm not sure if many people or many of your audience will remember this, but it was a very terrible time in the Middle East, you know, suicide bombings. Also, it's very similar somehow to what's happening today in Gaza. So, and also the Hamas-Israel war, and Hamas was relatively new at that time. People did not really attach it to radical Islamism at that time. Al Jazeera TV also was very new at that time, and they were showering us with footage from Gaza, you know, people under the rubble and all this stuff. So it was natural for me at that time to join the protests against Israel. And I did. I participated in some of the protests that were organized on my campus, just similar to all the brainwashed students you're seeing in American universities and European universities these days. So,
I used to in our elementary school in Iran, we used to burn the flag of Israel. I remember doing that as a kid too. So yeah,
this is crazy, you know. I mean, when you so I mean, it's very interesting. So I joined the protests, and after 2 months in protesting, you know, and feeling like, you know, I'm fighting for a humanitarian cause, I'm doing something bigger than myself, you know, things like that. And then one day, the people who were organizing the protest Sorry. So one day, the people who were organizing the protest in one sunny day in Cairo, they decided to burn some flags. And the people organizing the protests, by the way, are the Muslim Brotherhood. And they decided to burn some flags. So they started by burning the Israeli flag, which made sense because the protest is against Israel anyway. Then they burned the American flag, which did not make much sense to me because, well, America exists as like tens of thousands of miles away from Egypt. Why would burning their flag make any difference in the Gaza crisis or for the Palestinian people? How burning the American flag will liberate Al-Aqsa Mosque? So I kept asking myself these questions. And then they burned the third flag. And this third flag was my own flag, the Egyptian flag. At that moment, exactly, this was very shocking to me. Sorry, the changing weather and I have some cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the same thing. I have some cough syrups right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this was a very shocking moment for me. So I took a step back, very scared. I was 18 years old at that time. And I just said, okay, no, something wrong is happening here. So this is not acceptable. These people must be evil, must be dangerous, because if they don't respect my flag, the flag of the country they exist in, then there must be something wrong. So this was the moment I literally opened the box that I was stuck into for so long by religious rhetoric, by political narrative, and so on. And I decided to get out of this box and educate myself about Israel, about the Jewish people, about the Jewish culture, about also Islam and Islamism. I honestly, at that time, I almost lost my faith. I almost lost my belief in religion. And I started to educate myself once again about what this religion is, why these people are using religion to do these things. And then eventually I built the character that remained with me for the rest of my life. The new persona, the new person that's called Dalia, that remained with me until today, who is more tolerant, more understanding, passionate about Muslim-Jewish dialogue, passionate about Arab-Israel peace. And this has been my life and my work since then.
Okay, that's interesting. I do want to, if you, at some point, get to your faith and talk about that as well. But before, so you actually managed, maybe I should just talk, do you mind if I just talk about it right now? Because you managed to find a way to keep your faith while still supporting Israel and not be anti-Jewish. A lot of people might have a lot of questions about that because they see the anti-Jewish narratives within Islamic texts, within the Quran and the Hadith, authentic Sahih Hadith from the Prophet, promising that Muslims will one day kill all the Jews. The Quran telling people, Muslims, not to befriend Christians and Jews, to humiliate them, disrespect. Muhammad has Sahih Hadith telling you that you should be insulting the Jews when you see them in the streets. And also, I think the new faith, Islamic, your understanding of Islam is that this is something personal that shouldn't be forced upon anybody. But somebody who reads the Quran and the Hadith says, well, actually, the Quran and Hadith make it very clear that this is not personal. There is no Islam and Islamism, because people say there's Islam and Islamism, and Islamism is political. Islam is not political. But some people who read the Quran and the Hadith are like, okay, no, actually, the whole Quran and Hadith is political by nature. So how would you respond to all of that?
Wow, so many difficult questions, but let me start. Yeah, I agree with you. Unfortunately, there are terrible, terrible things in our holy texts in Islam that are very discriminative. And I think the main problem, I believe, in the way we consume Islam in general, I mean, as Muslims or even as people who are reading about Islam, not even Muslims, is that Muslims were not trained on being critical thinkers, on questioning. I'm sure also you had similar experience when you were young, like a child growing up in a Muslim family, or I mean, you would always they would always tell you things like, don't question, just take the orders as they are, take the word of Quran as it is, take Hadith as it is, because if you question, you are not a good Muslim, and these are orders from God. You should not question. And when I started, when I had this eye-opening moment and I started to educate myself about Islam once again, I started to question. I broke this barrier of fear and I started to question everything in the holy texts. And then eventually I decided to take only the things that helped me become a better human being. Not only a better Muslim, become a better human being, and just discard everything else that unfortunately is attached to Islam in one way or another, but does not represent me right now, does not represent me as Dalia, as this person who lives in the year 2024, who lives in this modern society, who lives with people who are not anymore the Bedouin society where Islam started in. So with this understanding, many things changed in my perception, especially when it comes to the Jews. Actually, most of the holy texts that are criticizing the Jewish people in Islam, they appeared in the early days of Islam, in the time of the Prophet Muhammad and his companions. So it's in the early days of Islam. And the reason for that is that they were attached to the fights happening between the Muslim tribes at that time and the Jewish tribes, for reasons that does not necessarily has to do with religion. Actually, it's for economic reasons, for political reasons. But what happened is that they politicized the religion at that time in order to give justification for the Muslims to fight against these Jewish tribes and defeat them, so the economic and political benefits goes to the Muslim tribes. So this is
so do you consider the Quran to be, as a Muslim right now, I will get back to the political stuff. I just want to know, do you consider the Quran to be the direct word of God or not? The Quran?
No, I think it's a holy book, and it's open to interpretations. Even if if you look at how it was collected, even after it was collected, like the verses of Quran or the book of Quran as we know it today, it was collected by Osman ibn Affan. Later on, he's one of the companions, for those who don't know, and it was collected and organized in a different way than it was actually sent from God or being given to God. So I believe in that sense. Yeah, I believe in that sense. So it's open to our interpretations as persons. We should not take our interpretations from sheikhs. Yeah.
But so you consider the Quran not to be a direct revelation from God, but a work by humans? Is that how you're saying?
Like the original, like the verses separately could be a revelation from God, but how they are collected and gathered in this book is another issue, and also how they are interpreted and explained to us later on by people who interpreted the Quran and who lived at that time or claimed that they lived even at a time closer to the Quran was released, is a different issue. So I believe, you have a holy text, like I know, like in Judaism, for example, they have their own holy texts in Judaism, but they don't take it for granted. They don't take it as they are. They keep debating with it. And I think this is one of the greatest things about the Jewish religion, actually, is that it encourages questioning and critical thinking, which we don't have in Islam. In Islam, you're just asked to take it for what it is. Don't question, don't argue.
But the Quran says, but the reason why we don't have that in Islam is because the Quran says take it as it is and don't question it.
Exactly.
The Quran itself asks you to do
that. There is a verse,
but the Quran asks it.
This is the thing. You don't take every word if it doesn't make sense. I mean, we are humans. We have our minds. We can think. We have our hearts that tells us whether this is right or wrong. There are things that does not make any sense. I mean, I
Yep,
mean,
and also what doesn't make sense to me is that, when you say that there's up to interpretation, there's certain verses in the Quran that doesn't leave much room for interpretation, right? And there's certain hadiths, like for example, when the Quran says if your wife doesn't listen to you, beat her, like
yes.
it doesn't. There's not much interpretation. It's just it's telling you to beat your wife. Or when we have hadith from Muhammad that says kill people apostates like me, it doesn't leave much room for interpretation. And he didn't say, and the Quran itself says Muhammad is a role model for all time and his commands are for all time. So when you say that this was supposed to be for back then, but the Quran is not saying that this was supposed to be for back then. The Quran itself makes it clear that all the commandments from the Quran and Muhammad being a role model is for all men at all time, including today. That's why it's really hard for me to come up with a way to make excuses for core Islam or make a version of Islam that could work in modern times.
No,
But
it's not a version of Islam. I mean, no. The thing is that we need to understand that there is nothing wrong with being critical. Actually, I call it. I'm not the only person, by the way, doing this. Actually, there is an entire movement around this in the Arab world right now, and it's mostly led by young people who think that we live in a different age, in a different time, and we don't have to take words that were written like 1400 years ago for what they are in a culture and society that is very different than ours. Islam,
so why not?
if in
So
its
why not just put Islam aside then, if that's the case? Because Islam was
it's
for a
hard.
different
I
time.
mean, look, for me,
Why?
for example, it's very difficult. I wouldn't be able to live if I'm not religious. I understand completely the people who abandon religion, and I would say some people in my family actually, and many of my friends has already abandoned religion, and our relationship is still very strong and very good. But the things that it differs from one person to another. Some people can live without being religious, some people can't. But let me tell you this, actually, even those who still hold to religion like myself, there is I would say some Muslims are not the same. Like, not all Muslims are the same. It's a wide spectrum. You have the jihadists on the far right, and you have the liberal Muslims and the Sufis, whom I belong to, on the far left. We consider ourselves the reformists of Islam, the reformers of Islam. We are trying to
Yes.
reform the religion that was given to us and we believe in, but make it somehow adapt to the modern age we are living in. And I think nothing is wrong with that, as long as
Well,
at the end of the day, we believe that it's a personal practice. We are not trying to, impose it on other people. Unlike Islamists, for example, Islamists are very different from regular Muslims because their mission is to impose their perception of religion on other people, and this is the key issue, I believe.
so I'm gonna. People are saying to take it. Amir is telling me to take it easy, not to push back again. So let me tell you that I actually do want to show our disagreement, because I want to show that it doesn't matter if we disagree, because I consider you to be a liberal Muslim, and I disagree with your interpretation and view of Islam. I also disagree with reforming Islam. If you want, we could talk another day why I think reforming Islam is actually not a good thing to do, right? I could tell, but the point
Mhm.
is that one thing that we need to get used to, as me, I'm a liberal atheist, you're a liberal Muslim, is that liberals are better at disagreeing while still cooperating with each other, right? So
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
I don't. So you have a view of Islam that I don't agree with, but that doesn't mean you're not a liberal. You are a liberal with some liberal goals that I, as an atheist, can team up with you and work with, even though my views on Islam is very different and maybe even completely opposite with you. Like I could turn this entire show into a debate with you regarding you thinking Islam could be reformed, and I could tell you why I don't think Islam can be reformed. But that's a disagreement that we could have, and we could continue arguing about that while understanding that we also have some shared goals in our when it comes to secular activism, liberal activism, equal rights for women, LGBT activism, fighting anti-Semitism, defending Israel's right to exist, defending peace and democracy. There's so much here that we share, that disagreement, because there's some atheists that think like, oh, I disagree with you as a Muslim because you're a Muslim, and I disagree with you with your Islam. Therefore, you are not a liberal. And I don't understand that.
Hmm.
People, I agree with I agree that Islam and liberalism contradict with each other, right? And so if you think they don't contradict with each other, I disagree with you. But that doesn't mean that you are not a liberal. Just because Islam and liberalism contradict, in my view, with each other, that doesn't mean a Muslim cannot be liberal. A Muslim can be liberal by them having the wrong view that Islam and liberalism don't contradict. Even though that that view is wrong, they are still a liberal as long as they have liberal views and liberal values. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Let me tell you something. We all agree on one thing for sure, whether we are Muslims, atheists, Christians, Jews, or whatever religion we belong on or we don't belong to. I mean, so the only thing we agree on is that we all are humans. We belong to the same human family, and we all need to work for the good of this human family. And I think this should be the premises we build on any conversation or any cooperation that could happen between us. And really, I tell you, Armin, I'm ready. Look, I am a devout Muslim, but I'm ready to defend your right to be an atheist till as much as I can, till the last moment in my life, because this is your right as a human. And being a liberal Muslim, I don't see a contradiction here, because liberalism is mainly about individual rights, about human rights, about women's rights, about freedom. And all of these are values I believe in and value, regardless of my personal relationship with God, which is a different thing. I see them differently. I don't see them. And by the way, if at any moment I found that my religion will be contradicting my liberal values in any way, I would always favor my liberal values, because I feel we can only be better humans by being liberal. That's why I moved from being like, a naive student protesting under the flag of the Muslim Brotherhood in my university campus when I was 18 years old, into the person who is not shy to criticize Islam right now, despite being a Muslim myself. So
I'm an atheist liberal, you're a Muslim liberal, and we could work with each other towards certain similar objectives. And you think that you could work with an atheist even though they're an atheist? But what if I can work with a Muslim who's a liberal, who's even promoting Islam, as long as they're liberal? But would you mind working with an atheist that is actively trying to fight against Islam, right? So I'm not just an
I'm
yes, you're
I'm
okay with
part of a great organization. It's called the Clarity Coalition. And this Clarity Coalition is working on this purpose, which I told you about, a better good for all humans. We are a group of Muslims, liberal Muslims, of course, because our main fight is against radical Islamists and even extremists. And we have people who come from Christian backgrounds, Jewish backgrounds, and some people who are atheists and ex-Muslims. And we work together in the coalition, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder. And this is our goal, is to change the world for the better. That a world that can contain all of us, I mean?
Right. What not just atheists and ex-Muslims, but what about anti-Islam activists? Could you even work with them as well?
It depends. If they are hostile, like, it's impossible to dialogue with.
Not anti-Muslim, not hostile towards Muslim. Like, so for example,
Okay.
I am pro-Muslim, okay? I am pro-Muslim, anti-Islam, right? So would you be able to work with somebody who respects you and supports you as a human, but is against your ideology? Yes, no problem.
I will always look for the common ground between us. Of course, I wouldn't mind.
Fantastic.
I mean, because as I told you, religion is something personal between me and God. It doesn't have to do with my relationship with other human beings.
This is fantastic. See, like, this is what I want to advocate, because I want to show that people take disagreements too seriously. People think that disagreements means that we cannot be friends, we cannot work with each other. If I am anti-Islam, that's not that big of a deal. That's just a disagreement. I'm not against individual Muslims. I'm just against your views, and
You
that's
know,
just a disagreement that we could have.
to
That's
be
fine.
honest, Armin, actually, I would respect someone who takes the time to learn and choose not to be Muslim eventually after he educated himself, after he done his homework, I would say, and then you decided at the end of the day to be anti-Islam or to be an atheist. This is this is someone I would respect more than someone who didn't make the same effort and just accepted what they were given blindly and did not make the effort. So I would definitely respect someone like you than an imam or a sheikh who's at some mosque, cursing people all day and night and calling for war and jihad all day and night. I would definitely respect someone like you
You're
100
amazing.
times more.
You're my hero, Dalia.
Oh,
This is
thank you,
fantastic.
Armin. You are also, you have a very interesting story too. So I mean, you
Oh
are
well,
you are
thank
a great person too. I mean,
Oh wow, thank you, thank you. All right, so I know a lot more people are here to want to hear your views on Israel and Palestine stuff. So I went to this is a major topic that I'm passionate about. So I got sidetracked a little bit. But going back to your activism, what do you say to many Muslims around the world who will consider you to be a traitor, who will say that you are basically supporting the enemy? Can't you see Israel is killing so many Palestinians? How could you not support the resistance? How are you supporting apartheid? Why are you supporting genocide? Aren't you seeing what's happening in Gaza? Aren't you seeing all the crimes committed by the Zionist state? How do you respond to all of that? Yes,
oh
sorry.
my God, this is all like the Al Jazeera narrative about anyone and anything who speaks about this war. Look, of course, war is very ugly. It's very, very ugly. I don't say that I don't care for the people in Gaza who are paying a very, very heavy price for this war. I don't say that I'm fine with the images of children under the rubble. No, no one is actually. Everyone, I mean, should feel bad about this. And I would tell you, even my Israeli friends feel bad about this and they disagree with this. But the question here is why the people in Gaza right now are being killed? Is it because of the direct action of the Israeli military? Or is it because Hamas is using them as human shields? And Hamas has put them in this situation. And Hamas is using their blood as fuel for their lies. This is the thing. Hamas is the one who is completely responsible, is the organization who is completely responsible for the suffering of the Palestinian people right now in this war. Hamas, like rats, they did what they did on October 7th. They killed the Israeli civilians and then ran and hid in tunnels and left the Palestinian people almost naked to this war, without shelters, without anything. If Hamas militants are really, I mean, what they say they are, like the noble fighters, freedom fighters, and resistance fighters, and all this nonsense they are saying about themselves, they should have put the Palestinian people in the tunnels and fought the war that they started, that no one else started. Actually, Israel did not start this war. On October 6th, actually, not on October 6th, 2 days before October 7 happened, Israel was negotiating with Saudi Arabia on making a peace treaty on normalization. And this peace treaty and normalization included a better future, or discussions about a better future for the people in Gaza. The same things that happened with the United Arab Emirates before that. So when you think about it, who is guilty here? It's not Israel. It's 100% Hamas. It's the fault of Hamas and the crime of Hamas. And the blood, and actually it's go back and see the statements of the leaders of Hamas. You will be shocked by how they are so proud that they caused this suffering to the people of Gaza. So we need to, I mean, to look in a different way. I mean, unfortunately, the media machine behind Hamas and Hezbollah now, and I mean, Al Jazeera, Qatar, and all these terrorist sponsor states are so powerful that they were able to twist the narrative, not only among the Arab audience or among us in the Middle East, but even in the Western media, even in multilateral organizations and international organizations like the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, and so on. So it's crazy why Israel does not have a proper media machine. I wouldn't say as strong as what the terrorists are having, but a proper media machine to tell this to the world, that this war is not the fault of Israel. Actually, Israel is bringing terrorists to justice, and it should be helped in this task by all the international community and by Arab states as well. I don't know why Arab states don't understand that Israel is fighting this war for a better Middle East. All these militia and proxies, including Hamas, by the way, including the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafists, they are not fighting only against Israel. They are also fighting against us. They are hurting us. The Houthis, a few months ago, they were firing rockets on Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. They are now blocking the Red Sea and causing a terrible economic problem, like doubling the economic problem on Egypt. And they are harming all of us. It's not only Israel. The target is not only Israel, but they are harming all of us, and they should be appropriately fought against.
Yeah. Do you think a huge part of the Islamic world and also the Western world is like maybe people who are considered progressives or leftists or whatever they want to call them in the Western world? They're basically using the Palestinian cause to spend the Palestinian people for their revolutionary fetish or for their whatever cause that, I mean, it seems like everybody except the Palestinians outside of Palestine is benefiting some way from the Palestinian cause. They're basically spending the Palestinian blood and tears for their own self-interest of whatever movement they're in. And the Palestinian people are being sold this false hope of a victory of either in this life or in the afterlife. And this false hope, they have managed to, like the Arab world and the Islamic Republic of Iran and all these, leftist Westerners have somehow managed to keep Palestinian people in this ideological bubble, giving them this false hope to keep fighting. They get to feel like revolutionaries, but it's the Palestinian people who are just spending the blood while they get to stay in safety, enjoy feeling like they're standing up to power, standing up to evil, but not paying any price for it, but just using the feeling like victims by making the Palestinian people be the victims, but they get to enjoy feeling like enjoy participating in the victimhood narrative by proxy. Do you think like that's the Palestinian cause has basically made the Palestinian people the main victims? Like it's called the Palestinian cause, but I feel like it has been it has been a curse upon the Palestinian people. But what do you think?
I love the way you're putting it, Armin. But actually, let me explain to you and the audience how I view this conflict, and it very much, can very much explain your point. The things that, if you look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it started only as a territorial conflict, as a conflict over a piece of land between two parties. One party is Israel, and the other party are the Arabs who lived in this area at that time. And they had a fight over the territory, similar, for example, to the territorial conflict we're seeing in Cyprus, not very far away from where Gaza and Palestinian territories and Israel is. So it's mainly a fight over a piece of land. Then, when Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt came in power in the 1950s and the 1960s, Arabs started to build what was known at that time the Pan-Arabism ideology, the national Arabism or Arab nationalism, which means that all Arabs are one thing against this one enemy, which they call the West. It was not at that time Israel, actually. It started as we are united against the enemy that is called the West, the Western civilization that comes with new values that, according to them, are strange to our our culture, and they are trying to impose these values on us, which of course these are lies. I mean, none of this is true, but this is how they sold Arab nationalism to the Arab public. And then Israel was formed in 1948, was established. Thus, they found a great nail to hang all their problems in, and to also direct the Arab nationalist movement towards, and or as a common enemy. I mean, as so it's a common enemy. Here we have Israel in the region. It's a common enemy. Let's fight against it as Arab nationalist groups. But the thing is that, and they started to say things like, all the Jewish people in all Arab countries should be mistreated, should be expelled from Arab countries because their loyalty is now to Israel. And they even started to discriminate against the Jewish people in Arab countries and pushed all of them to go to Israel. And then this polarization happened. Arabs united in one side, trying to fight this new enemy that appeared in the region on the other side, which actually, when you think about it, more than 60% of the Jewish population in Israel today come from Arab origins. They used to live in Arab countries before they were Arabs, before they moved to Israel, before they were pushed and forced to move to Israel. So in that sense, actually, Israel is an indigenous piece of the Middle East, of the Arab culture, of the Arab societies. But of course, for the reasons they had at that time to enhance this idea of Arab nationalism and enhance the idea that Israel is an enemy, they kept intensifying this war between Arabs and Israelis, that Arab is something and Israelis is a different thing. And then eventually, the territorial conflict got a very thick layer upon it, which is an Arab-Israeli conflict. And then upon this thick layer, by the 1980s, 1990s, the political Islamist movements in Arab countries, like the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, they were gaining momentum at that time because of the religious rhetoric that President Sadat and then President Mubarak started to use to control the general public. They really, I mean, I remember at that time, people were telling us this was the time when, imams and sheikhs would appear on TV like superstars. People stop them in the street and take their autographs and want, to say that I made this person. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, how the state itself manipulated the minds using religion. So the radical Islamists and political Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood in particular here, they capitalized on this momentum, and they wanted to gain the public sympathy as well and gain support among the general public. And of course, the most favorite topic they can capitalize on is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So they represented themselves at that time as representatives of the Muslims who are fighting against Israel. And they started to dig deep at that time, including, by the way, not only political Islamists, but also institutions like Al-Azhar in Egypt, which is a formal Islamic institution and that claims to be moderate, but unfortunately it's not. It dug deep into holy texts to bring in the holy texts that existed at the time when the Jewish tribes were fighting against the Muslim tribes in the early days of Islam, and bring them to the forefront. Things like, all Muslims have to fight all Jews. If Muslims kill the Jews, the Messiah will appear at the end. And we are in a constant holy war against the Jewish people, and we have to kill them, and all this stuff. So they dug deep and brought up these issues. And actually, among this was the birth of the slogan "Khaybar Khaybar Ya Yahud, Jaysh Muhammad Sawfa Yaud," which is, "Oh Khaybar, oh Jewish people," like it was in Khaybar, which was a tribe at the time of the Prophet, a Jewish tribe that was actually annihilated at the time of the Prophet by the Muslims. It was like a real genocide at that time. So they say, like, what happened to Khaybar at that time, we will do the same to you now as Muslims. So this was the time when this slogan was born. And they started, and all of a sudden, the conflict that started as a territorial conflict and then became an Arab-Israeli conflict, now it has become a Muslim-Jewish conflict. What we are seeing, I believe, actually, by the signing of the Abraham Accords in the 2020, this layer of Arab-Israeli conflict has dissolved somehow. I would say semi-dissolved. It's not as sick as it was anymore, because now Arabs and Israelis have diplomatic relations, have dialogues, have ups and downs. It's not as stiff as it was in the early days of Arab-Israeli conflict. But what's the biggest problem right now actually is the Muslim-Jewish layer of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Because you would see people, for example, in Southeast Asia, in countries like Malaysia, Pakistan, Indonesia, who hate Israel so much. Although geographically they are very distant from Israel, they have never been involved in wars with Israel in any way. But why they hate Israel? Why they want to fight against Israel? Because they believe that Islam told them to do so. And they are doing it from their perception that this is a Muslim-Jewish conflict. And I believe if we really, really want to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we have to focus on this part, to focus on highlighting that it's not a Muslim-Jewish conflict. It's not at all. It's a territorial conflict over a piece of land. Let's take it back to its actual size. This is what should be the case.
So let me know if you agree with this. The way I see how this progress is that with the foundation of Israel, the main the Palestinian cause was used as an excuse, but the real motivation behind fighting Israel was a pan-Arabist agenda. So before it became, there was Islam, it was also influential, but the main motivation was not an Islamic caliphate. At first, it was a pan-Arabist. It was mostly secular. It was more of a racist Arab superiority against anti-Jewish ethnicity, not anti-Jewish.
No, it was not racist. It was mainly, the people who started the Arab-Israeli conflict, like pan-Arabism versus Israel, were actually communist, socialist, communist background. Yes. So yes, they were secular. They were not religious at all. But the thing is that it's not racism, but it's more about us, the Western Bloc, versus them, the Western Bloc.
Right. Yes. So the understanding was, if we want to make a pan-Arabist, empire or unity, create an Arab country that is all Arabs are united, the Western Bloc has created this tiny little country in the middle of it, in the middle of our Arab empire, that is basically making this not feasible. So we have to remove this Western tumor from the middle of all of this for us to be able to create this pan-Arabist empire. So Jamal Abdel Nasser was basically the leader of that movement, and Israel basically humiliated him and crushed him and defeated. So that movement was pushed aside, and the pan-Arabist movement was a failure. So then the Islamists took over, and now then the anti-Israel agenda was, because instead of creating a pan-Arabist empire, the goal was to create an Islamic caliphate to be a block against the Western empire. And that was basically the same narrative, that this Zionist tumor is in the middle of not a pan-Arabist empire, but an Islamic empire, an Islamic caliphate. And now we need to remove this tumor so that we could create an Islamic caliphate. And that project mostly failed because the leaders of these Arab countries, Sunni Arab countries, became closer and closer to realizing that, okay, this Israel is not going anywhere, and we need to be able to have stability in this region. So they started becoming closer and closer to Israel. So now the third phase is, so the pan-Arabism failed, the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic caliphate, everything, all that failed. The third phase is an Islamic imamate. The Shia, so it's now the Islamic Republic of Iran. So where the pan-Arabists and the Muslim Brotherhood and even ISIS failed, now the Shia empire, starting from Tehran, they are basically the major players. And they, instead of making an Islamic caliphate, they want to make an Islamic imamate. and they think basically Israel is a tumor again in this region, agents of the West that is basically in the middle of all of this, making it impossible to make this entire place into an empire, and they have to remove it for that to make them possible. And that's where we are right now, and that's why, as we are speaking, there's war right now between the Islamic Republic and Israel, and missiles are being exchanged and stuff like that. So do you think this is an accurate representation?
Yes, I agree with you, of course, especially the last part when you said that. I believe what's happening right now, the whole scene from the very beginning, by the way, it's an Iran or the Iranian regime, the Islamic regime in Iran, not Iran, because the Iranian people are amazing. Actually, they are fighting also a very tough fight against this Islamic regime. So the Islamic regime of Iran versus the West. And in the middle, and this war is happening on the chessboard of the Middle East. So it's the Islamic regime of Iran versus the West versus the US on the chessboard of the Middle East. Of course, Israel is a key issue. Arabs are a key issue. I mean, but for Iran or the Iranian regime to win this war, they also decided to capitalize on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict because they know this is the trauma of the region. This is the thing that they can really use to gain supporters, to appear as champions, but
right.
Yeah, but
yes,
as you said earlier, Armin, actually, if they really care for the good of the Palestinians, if they really care for a better future for the Israeli-Palestinian peace, they would not be doing what they are doing right now.
So based on what we're saying, I think the given the history and how Israel has managed to gain its security and safety, the only solution, I think, is the toppling of the Islamic Republic in Iran. I think that we will not have any resolution. Like, I don't think there's any form of negotiation or peace treaty that you could write on paper. I don't think you could negotiate with Hamas. I don't think you could negotiate with Hezbollah. I don't think you could negotiate with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Israel has shown that every time it managed to bring peace and stability for its people and people in the region is by defeating its enemies. It was by defeating the Jamal Abdel Nasser. It was by defeating, the way Israel and Egypt got a peace treaty is by victory in war. It wasn't. Yes. I mean, I always tell people, like, look, at World War One. They as a result, they decided to write on a piece of paper that, well, hey, let's not fight anymore. And look where that didn't stop war. That World War II started right after that. But World War II brought many years of peace after it because the Allies just crushed their enemies. Like, that's how you bring peace, not by appeasement, not by negotiation, but by destroying the people who want to bring war. You don't. If the Islamic Republic of Iran is telling the world that their goal is to annihilate Israel, any form of negotiation and appeasement is just delaying the war to another day where they're stronger. So the only solution for peace is to defeat the Islamic Republic of Iran. What do you think? Yeah.
And the thing also is that when you think about all these regimes and proxies that are leading this war against Israel right now, it's not a secret that what they are doing is called Islamic jihad. It's a jihad in their perspective. And jihad has no end. It does not end with a peace treaty. And when they go and say, let's negotiate about ceasefire, let's negotiate about anything like that, what they mean actually is having what we call in Arabic or Islam, hudna, just a temporary pause to the war, so we can rearm, regroup, and come back and continue killing you. It's not about really. It's not about peace. It's not about let's have peace, let's coexist. This is how they think. And unfortunately, when on the other side, the people, I mean, in the West, in Western, like the United States, for example, when it says let's have a ceasefire, let's bring all sides to talk, they don't understand this difference in the mindset between Israel, which wants to negotiate because it wants to achieve peace, long-lasting peace, while these Islamists, they don't negotiate about peace. They negotiate about, please give us a break until we rearm and come back to you. This is how they think.
This is what the world doesn't understand. They think because Israel doesn't accept a ceasefire, so Israel is on the side of war. But
No.
that the ceasefire is just basically a break for them to become more powerful, because
Also,
they will fight again. Yes,
also,
exactly.
let me add, negotiating with a terrorist organization is a mistake. Terrorist
Mhm.
organization, the only way to deal with a terrorist organization is to defeat it, to get it to the point that it is too weak to do anything. Actually, negotiating with Hamas, what are you negotiating with Hamas? Hamas committed a massacre and
Right.
exposed tens of thousands of Palestinians to war, and who are now suffering this war. So what are you negotiating exactly with Hamas? Do you think they will all the time be merciful and decide just let's end war, let's be peaceful? I think all these negotiations were mainly meant, I mean, the ceasefire negotiations between that the United States called for, and Egypt and Israel and Qatar participated in as mediators. If you track how it started, actually it started with a call from Qatar. Qatar needed at that time, and it was at the very, very early days of the war, very early days of the war. And Qatar at that time, because, well, they did not expect that Israel's response will be that strong, they needed, they all of a sudden thought like, okay, Hamas is going to be crushed, so let's throw a lifeline to Hamas. And for Qatar, the best lifeline to throw is to bring Egypt, to bring the US, and make an alliance of moderators and say, okay, let's discuss ceasefire. Let's work on ceasefire and blame Israel for not accepting to do ceasefire and defending itself, actually. So what we're seeing now is once again a twisting of the narrative, a very old game that they have been playing for so long. I mean, Qatar, Al Jazeera, and this axis of evil, they have been playing for a while. And any negotiations of this kind is just a waste of time and waste of energy. And if all the involved parties were simply doing it to play for their own domestic audience. The United States, there is an elections in the United States, and the Biden administration wanted to appear like they are doing something good in the region. In Egypt, they wanted, as you know, Egypt always wants to appear as the champion of the Palestinian cause. So they participated in this with this purpose, like to gain or regain their lost role as a leading power in the region, in Egypt, I mean. For Qatar, Qatar wants the interest of Hamas, wanted to rescue Hamas from the military force of Israel, or from the grip of Israel. So they came up with this ceasefire negotiations thing that has failed and was doomed to fail from day one.
Mhm. Delia, there's a lot of people in the chat that are telling me that are praising you and loving every word that you're
Oh,
saying.
thank you.
Is there? I think this is. I want to make sure that they follow your work. Where can they? People are saying
Yeah,
yes, she's right.
actually,
They're clapping. They're saying, where can
oh,
they
thank
find you? I'm
you.
actually gonna
Thank
put.
you, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with what you're saying and what you're. I've been reading the comments as we speak.
Oh yeah.
For you to follow me, actually, I exist mostly on. I live on Twitter. Actually, this is where I exist most of the time, and you can find me just by putting my two names together, my first name and last name together in one word. So it's Dalia Ziada on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere. So it's exactly like that. At Dalia Ziada everywhere.
Okay, I'm gonna post your Twitter
Yeah.
account on the chat. Oh, you don't follow me. I'm heartbroken.
Oh, really? Oh, how come? Yeah, I'll do today. But I follow you on
Okay.
YouTube. Actually, it's I watch
Okay.
most of your videos on YouTube.
Guys, here's the link to her Twitter account. So I'm gonna guys go follow her on Twitter or X or whatever.
Yeah.
There are but there are some super chats. If you I'm gonna read them. Some of them are directed at you. But before I do that, can you give me, what do you think is gonna happen? What's your prediction? Uh, in the region, and also, two questions. First of all, what's your prediction about the whole Israel and Palestine and the wider Middle East? What's in the next couple of decades? And also, I was gonna talk more. We didn't manage to talk about this, but I was gonna, because in Iran there's a huge pushback against the Islamic theocracy of the regime. And I know in Egypt there's also a lot of similar movements. And I wanted to ask you if there are any parallels between that, or is there any bridges that we could make? I do see a lot of people in Egypt. There's a lot of atheist activism. There's a lot of content
Yes.
coming from Egyptians
Yes.
regarding secularism, regarding atheism, regarding liberalism. So I know there's a rich history of secular activism in Egypt, and
Yes.
I also see that in Iran. And I wanted to see if there's anything similar or any bridges or any unity. Like, what do you think?
There are many similarities between Iran and Egypt, by the way. I mean, in terms of the population, the majority of the population are young people. There is a strong wave of secularism and liberalism in the streets, although in Egypt it's more silent than it is in Iran. I mean, the Iranian people are maybe more courageous, especially the women, actually, than their counterparts in Egypt. But also
they're more tired.
Yeah, but
they're more tired because they live under a theocracy.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So I think there are many similarities. Also, the size of the population is almost the same. So we have big populations, young populations. The demography also is almost the same. So I think we can find so much in common to do. But the problem is that our regimes will never get together. I mean, the military regime in Egypt, no matter how they claim that they want better relationships with Iran, cannot get along with the Islamic regime in Iran, because it is also the Islamic regime in Iran poses as an enemy to countries, Arab countries that are close allies to Egypt, like Saudi Arabia, for example. So it's keeping all this in mind, it's very difficult to see any fruitful cooperation between these two great countries with two great cultures until the two regimes are somehow weakened and removed. And I mean, we become democracies. Maybe if we become democracies, we will find so much in common to do together. So this is the thing, and hopefully one day we can actually. If you, at the time of President Sadat in Egypt and the Iranian Shia at that time, I think there were discussions and negotiations based on secular background on cooperation between the two countries. So hopefully one day we can. Hopefully one day we can make it happen.
Egypt at that time was the only country that was open its arms to the Shah, because he was like, even the United States betrayed the Shah. He had cancer, and it was Egypt that embraced him and took care of him after the Shah was kicked out. So Egypt and they used to have a good relationship with each other.
Exactly.
Hopefully, after Iran gets rid of the Islamic Republic, we could go back to having a peaceful relationship with Israel.
And after Egypt becomes a democratic country also.
Are you optimistic?
I'm always optimistic, although they sound very impossible right now, both things. I mean, but I'm optimistic. If you look at what Israel has achieved in the past few months in terms of fighting against terrorist organizations, I mean, ranging from Hamas to Hezbollah to the Houthis, and now they are acting like a real threat to the Islamic regime in Iran. When you think about it, we have to be optimistic.
Optimistic and very grateful, because it seems like Israel is doing all the work.
Exactly.
A lot of the work is being done by Israel.
I think Arab countries are only there, condemning and blaming, but actually Israel is the one who's doing the actual work. Yeah.
And I think, I suspect, tell me if I'm correct, the Arab leaders are like telling their people like, oh yeah, Israel is like evil, but hope, and they're waiting like, oh my God, I hope Israel is successful in destroying Hezbollah and Hamas. 100%. Do you agree that the Arab leaders are basically secretly rooting for Israel to be successful?
Yeah. All of them are threatened by Hamas, by the radical Islamists, by the political Islamists. Of course, all of them are praying secretly that Israel wins this war against the Iranian-sponsored militias. or the Islamic regime sponsored militias. Of course. I mean, no question about this. And actually, recently there was a statement by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He said very clearly that I don't care about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I care about my own country. He said this. So, and I think this is the same way all the other Arab leaders are thinking, except that they are unable to challenge the mainstream in their countries, which is now somehow led by radical Islamists, unfortunately.
You know, I always say that Israel was designed as a country to save the Jews, but if they're successful, it ends up being a country that saved the Jews and the Arabs and the Persians and everyone else in the Middle East.
They will be they are literally right now saving the world.
Right.
They are literally saving the world. I mean, Israel is doing a favor to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, they just killed, like when they killed Ibrahim Akil, they just killed the terrorists that Americans have been looking for the past 40 years. That killed so many French and Americans. I mean, they're killing everyone else's terrorists. They're killing the people who want to remove Israel to the point so that they could eventually go and attack the West. Israel is in their way. Like when Americans say, like, oh, why are we supporting Israel? Israel has done nothing for us. I'm like, they're dying fighting your enemies. They're dying.
Exactly.
That's what they're doing.
And for me also as an Egyptian, Israel helped Egypt get rid of Hamas terrorists in Sinai. It's actually Israel. I mean, Israel is a great force. They are the only country in the region that was able to bring terrorists to justice, actually. And they should. History will remember that. History will write about this.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope history is kinder to Israel than what people are right now. I'm going to quickly go. People are really appreciating your views on this. I'm going to quickly go through the super chats. Nechama, I think, is saying much appreciation to you, Dalia, for your voice, perspective, and honesty. Thank you so much. And also, Populous was telling me when I was pushing back against you on Islam, they were telling me that I should stop putting you in danger. I think.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Actually, okay. I mean, the best thing is when you are able to debate in a healthy environment and to question things. Nothing is wrong with that. I mean, as long as we respect each other, nothing is wrong.
Yeah, and okay, talking about respect, this person is asking, what do you think about the 72 virgins for murders, and does this affect how Muslim women are treated in life? So I don't know.
Actually, this is one of the most shameful things I know. Actually, not. We will be cheated in this life and the afterlife. It's. And actually, I remember one day I asked the sheikh, who was very, very conservative, like in Egypt, like, what about us women? If we go for jihad and we die for the sake of God, will you give us 72 boys?
What did he say?
I mean, well, it's not fair. It's not fair,
Isn't Kalman for that? Kalman? There's I don't know. Or I think there are these young angel boys with like eyes like.
But not only for women. No, they are not only for women. Actually, it's also for men who like men.
Yes.
Like for gay men.
Yes.
You know
so
what I mean?
Islam basically, so some people
but
say that those
for
are
women.
but
this is
not.
The thing.
Yes, those are actually. So Islam tells you that if you have gay tendencies, like if you are attracted to same men, you can't have sex with men in this life, but don't worry, in heaven we'll give you young boys with pearly eyes. Yes, so that's not that. Even the boys are not for you. Even the boys are for men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They forgot that. I mean, they very discriminative against women. Yeah, even in the afterlife.
Okay, so Isa is saying, Mabruk, what a beautiful, respectful conversation. Well, thank you. Can you translate this? I don't know what this one is saying. I speak Persian.
It says war burns everything green and land. It burns everything. It means war burns everything.
Oh, okay.
War is a bad thing.
Well, I mean, to be fair, sometimes we need some war to be able to end wars, because the best way to get long-lasting peace is to destroy the people who are anti-peace. So sometimes war is necessary.
Especially if your
Um,
enemy is not thinking about peace. Their only goal is to eliminate you.
yes,
Like, for example, people now speak about the two-state solution, which does not make any sense, because if you go to the Palestinians and ask them, do you want two-state solution, they would immediately say, no, we want just to
right.
finish Israel, to eliminate Israel. They are
Yes,
so obsessed with eliminating Israel more than they are obsessed with building their own state.
yeah, they have given up having a country because they prefer to be to destroy Israel rather than having a country. Every time they have been given a chance to have Israel and have Palestine, they're like, no, we are willing to not accept having Palestine, because that would also mean that we have to accept Israel's existence. So it's
Yeah,
basically the Palestinian people who have rejected having Palestine as a country. It hasn't been Israel. Israel has been
yes,
offering that many times, but they have just said no every single time. Yeah. So
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Erkin is saying, in Islam there is no eternal peace until everyone submits. Eternal peace is in existence of unbelievers in is antithetical to Islam.
Hmm.
Do you agree with that? I mean, you're nodding
Yeah,
your head, but you are Muslim. I don't know why you're
jihad.
nodding your head.
No, no, this is the concept of jihad I told you about. You
Right.
are
Okay.
waging jihad as a Muslim against all disbelievers until actually this,
Right.
if you think about it, also this is how Islam started as a political religion itself. Like waging jihad,
Yes.
conquering other
Conquer.
countries, trying to, spread the word of Islam everywhere, even with the sword. I mean, so yeah, I
So,
mean,
that some people might say, like, Dalia just has made a Dalia Islam, right? We have Muhammad's
yes,
Islam, and we have
yeah.
Dalia's. Oh, you agree with that? So this is
I
Dalia's
think
Islam,
so.
not Muhammad's Islam. Okay.
Every one of us has his or her own perception about their relationship with religion and with God. I mean,
Right.
it's everyone is free. You can choose. Okay, I don't believe that there is something called God, and I just don't want to have this relationship. Someone like me still values this relationship, so I have to adapt it somehow to make it to make it something that I can work with. You know what I mean?
Right.
Something
So
that I can
it's more
really
of an
enjoy, not struggle with.
right. So it's more of an emotional thing. It's an identity thing, right? It's a
Yes,
membership thing. It's not like, yeah, okay, all right. So I get that. I get that. We got a new member, which is in Hebrew. I cannot pronounce that, but thank you so much for being a member. And also we got another thank you saying thank you, Dalia, hoping for better
absolutely.
days. Thank you. And then there's the last one, Jennifer saying, Armin, thank you for highlighting Dalia. She shows that one doesn't have to be secular. No, she does. She is secular. She is
Yeah,
secular.
everyone is
Yeah,
free.
you are
Yeah,
secular. Yeah, yeah. So she's not an atheist, but she's secular. So secular. So remember, secularism and atheism didn't. Yeah. So she says secularism and atheism didn't help the Jews during Nazism. It is Muslims like Dalia that will bring peace. Actually, secularism has made Israel a much stronger. Guys, secularism just means the separation of states, politics, and religion. And I think me and Dalia agree that that's better for every society that is
liberalism.
secular.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
It's
yes,
more
that's
about
yes.
liberal values, liberal valuing humanity, not certain groups among this human race.
Right. And also I want to remind people that it was actually secularists who saved the Jews, because the Zionism was a secular movement started by non-religious ethnic Jewish people. Zionism was a secular movement that had nothing to do with Judaism. So secularism did save the Jews by, if in fact the first anti-Zionist people were religious Jews against secular Jews. So it was, and also Israel is a superior country compared to other countries in the Middle East because it's more secular than other countries in the Middle East. So, and it's more
Yes,
liberal and it's more secular. Secular is one of the principles of liberalism. So, it actually, the reason why Israelis are enjoying much more superior lives than other people in the Middle East is because of their secularism. So, I
Yeah.
just wanted to correct. Yeah. So you agree? See, we agree. Me and Dalia agree on that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Again, please go support Dalia. Go follow her on Twitter. Again, I will post her X or Twitter account, whatever you want to call X or Twitter. Do you call it X? I can't. I can't. I
It's
still call
Twitter.
it
I
Twitter.
still call it Twitter, actually. I still love the old name. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
by the way,
Same.
let me tell you something. You know, the reason why I joined Twitter in 2009 was to follow what the Iranian protesters at that time. It was the
Oh,
time when,
really?
yes, it was the
Oh,
time when it was mainly to follow the Iranian, what the Iranian youth
oh,
are doing. Really, so
oh, that's so heartwarming. Oh, my
yeah,
heart.
thank you,
Oh, that's so
thank
sweet. I
you.
appreciate that. Oh, this was such a good
You,
time.
thank you.
Okay.
And I
All
just
right.
want to say one last thing, Shana Tova, to all the people who are
Oh,
following us from Israel and the Jewish communities worldwide. So Shana Tova to everyone.
yeah, Shanatov, there are so many people in the live chat that were saying that as well. And yeah, and also Jennifer with the last super chat, Jennifer saying, agreed. I mean, atheism. I'm referring to pagan atheist Nazis. Okay, well, pagan and atheist are contradiction, but thank you so for the support. Okay, I'm not going to get into a debate with Jennifer on this at the end of the show. All right, guys. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you Jennifer for your support. Thank you for everybody else for their support. And guys, please like the stream. Please recommend this channel, the Atheist Republic YouTube channel, to your friends, to your enemies, to gens and angels, to your pets, to everybody that might be interested in following our show. And also leave a comment after the show is over. Go support Dalia. Dalia, what's the name of your organization? Because you're part of a liberal think tank, right? What's your name of
Yes, it's the Liberal Democracy Institute.
Liberal Democracy Institute? Okay, so and they could find information on that on your Twitter
Yeah, just
account.
Google Liberal Democracy Institute online and you'll find it. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you also wrote a book. What's the name of your book?
Yes, it's called The Curious Case of the Three-Legged Wolf: Egypt,
Okay,
Military Islamism, and Liberal Democracy. And it's on Amazon also if you want to read it. Yeah.
fantastic, guys. Go check that out. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna end the stream. Thank you. Stay liberal.
Thank you.
Tell
Yes.
you. Yes.
Thank